seems to be going right. Before we go any further, I want to thank our partners in this research project: the Children's Aid Foundation, Voices Manitoba, Thunder Bay, Algoma, London, Middlesex, Oxford, Toronto Catholic, Ontario Association of Children's Aid Societies, and the Elgin Children's Foundation. I'd also like to thank John Campbell, Gerald McBride, and Brian Van Du, who you'll be hearing from a little bit later, for their counsel. At this point, we're going to take about half an hour to provide you with high-level results from the study, and there'll be time for questions and answers. The full version of the report is available now and can be found at measuredoutcome.org. So I'd like to pass it over to Rebecca Thomas, Measured Outcome Lead Investigator. Rebecca?
Thank you, Stephen. I'd just like to add that everyone is on mute for the presentation right now. So if you have any questions during the slideshow or the presentation, you can type the question to me in that little text box, and I can answer back to you in text, or you can wait until one of our 2 question sessions. And you can also raise your hand. It's a little yellow hand signal, and I can unmute you and you can ask a question during that session as well. So, so if you need any clarification, I hope that works for everybody. Just as a way of background to the study, according to official numbers from 2007, there were about 67,000 kids in care in Canada. The number, of course, has increased in the years since then. That means in Ontario alone, about 1 out of 182 kids in the province are in care. That's about 18,000 children and youth in care in Ontario. These youth in care are 46% less likely to graduate high school than their peers. They're also 4 times more likely to be a teen parent and have a higher incident rate with the youth justice system and with mental health issues. That roughly means about 1,700 youth in care in Ontario graduate from high school each year. A generous estimation is that 22% of those youth go on to post-secondary education, compared to an average of 60% of youth in the general population. What we wanted to find out with this study was what is it that makes the difference for these youth and that 22% who defy the odds against them. What we looked to do was find out how we could start to capture the experiences of these young people and use what we learned to help more youth achieve academic success. When did they decide to pursue post-secondary education and why? Did the availability of scholarships make their decision to pursue further education any easier? What challenges did they have in their pursuit of post-secondary education? And finally, what advice would they give to other youth who are just leaving high school? And what advice would they have for agencies who provide support and administer the scholarships to them? To answer these questions, we reached out to 8 youth in care agencies across Ontario and Manitoba. Through them, we heard from 188 youth who were in various stages of their academic life, anywhere from first year to post-grad studies to graduated and actually working in their field of study. The gender divide amongst the students in the study really struck us, with 74% of applicants being women and 25% being men. The typical gender divide among the average population is 73% women and 65% men. This is something we'll talk about further in a minute, because obviously there's a big gap in the enrollment of men in post-secondary for youth in care. It's also interesting to note that almost 60% of these students hold down a part-time or full-time job in addition to pursuing their studies. So they're hard work, they're working hard. When it comes to the area of study, in the second chart there, this group is a focused group. 96% of the study respondents had a clear focus and purpose for their educational path. Not surprisingly, the choice of study programs shows a strong leaning toward what perhaps is familiar and meaningful to the youth, with social work and psychology topping the field of study, followed by teaching, healthcare, and then police foundations. And I hope everybody can see the different categories. There's the full chart in the report, of course, as well.
One of the factors that we looked at in a little bit more detail, more carefully, was when these young people made their decision to go on to post-secondary studies. This is valuable as it helps those mentoring the youth better understand and respond to the motivation of young people at different stages. We broke the group down into 4 distinct categories. The first group said that they could not remember a time when they didn't want to continue on with post-secondary studies, or they had decided at a very young age. It's worth noting in this group, once again, the large percentage of young women. This is a very academically inclined group. They're motivated both positively and negatively, i.e. they're positive in that they respond well in an academic setting, and also negatively because they identified that their motivation was about not following in the paths of their birth parents. This group is a very deserving group, but they're less likely to be influenced by the existence of a scholarship. It's our sense that they will pursue studies and continue on regardless of the scholarship, though, as I said, they're quite deserving. The next group is the lowest percentage group, aged 11 to 14. Likely similar to youth in traditional families, not really clear about where they're going. However, this is a critical decision-making period at which academic versus non-academic course selection is very, very important. It's also, as many of you will know, a large dropout rate happens between age 14 and 15 when young people move from junior high to high school. The highest rate of respondents in numbers was the age 15 to 18 years of age. Particularly interesting within this group was the portion of young people who said that they decided to make their go on to post-secondary studies right about the age of 18. So ideally, these decisions are being made earlier in this age group rather than right at 18 when they're moving out of care. Finally, we had a group that we'd say it's the never too late group. Some of the respondents in this group were in their late 20s, and they were largely motivated by two factors. The first one was experience working in low-paid jobs after high school, and the second one, particularly amongst the female respondents, was a desire to create a better life for their own children. Rebecca.
As Stephen has just touched on, motivation and influence for the kids varied, but everybody kind of in this study had pretty clear goals and a passion for their future direction. For most of the youth, their motivation was quite clear. Some youth have a lifelong passion that they're following, while others are motivated to create, as Stephen said, a more stable and secure life for themselves based on their experience having an unstable life up until this point. Not surprisingly, many of the youth choose to follow a career path that allows them to help others who are faced with issues that they themselves have struggled through. So they really want to give back to other kids and give back to the system that has helped them get where they are. In addition to motivation, also of interest to us were the people who influence the students' decisions and help guide them into the post-secondary world. If you look at the chart on the right-hand side, you'll see that unsurprisingly, people in the CARE network are the most influential overall in helping these youth move into post-secondary education. Listed much, much further down the chart off the scale of this presentation are teachers at 4%. So family, friends, personal drive, and some kids just listed none. They just wanted to. And just in case you were wondering whether scholarships for youth in care make a difference, 50% of the youth who were involved in the study indicated that the availability of a scholarship directly influenced their decision to pursue post-secondary studies. So without that scholarship, 50% of the kids say that they might not have applied for future education. Which brings us to barriers. One of the other questions we asked the youth was to identify the main barriers they faced in pursuing further education. Financial struggles were overwhelmingly the top of the list, with 87% of the youth struggling with financial issues and money. This includes not only issues of income, but also budgeting and financial literacy, which is something you're going to hear us talk about again. If no one teaches you how to make a budget, how are you going to pay your bills at the end of each month is essentially what it comes down to. Next up were emotional issues, which include things like depression, loneliness, and mental health issues. A lot of kids in care are struggling with various mental health issues. Living situation was next on the list, which includes things like distance to school and finding adequate housing. And then it goes down into paperwork and learning disabilities. I just want to know, just before we introduce our special guest, we're going to take a quick break for any questions. Again, you can either type a question to me or you can raise your hand. If anybody has any questions immediately, we'll have questions at the end as well. I don't see any raised hands and I don't see any typing. I'll give you a minute. Our happy guy's asking. Okay, shall we just go on then?
Sounds good.
I would like to, I'm just going to unmute him. I'd like to introduce Brian Van Du. We're thrilled to have him on this webinar, and we'd like to thank you very much, Brian, for your help and work on the study over the past year. Brian, I will let you introduce yourself. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm delighted to share my story with you today. My name is Brian Van Du. I'm a 25-year-old former Crown Ward of Children's Aid Society of Toronto. I'm currently a second-year Ryerson social work student and also a child youth worker graduate from Seneca. So today I'm just going to share a bit about my brief story with in terms of post-secondary and my experiences with scholarships. Talk about some of the barriers, reasons for entering school as well, and then some tips that I would offer to future youth, and also what I'm doing presently. So in terms of barriers, I think I would probably agree with a lot of the surveys and the results that was produced here. Some of mine may be different in terms of, for youth in care, there's a lot of transitions, so just struggling to adapt to those transitions. Aging out was a big one. There's a lot of uncertainties revolving around that, such as questions like, where will I be living? How will I manage my money? Not even knowing what OSAP entails. How do I even complete my OSAP application? Or how do I even apply for college or university? At the time, I was also going through some lack of self-esteem and lack of confidence, and just really not believing in my personal skills. Even though I was told about scholarships, it still didn't really give me the confidence to attend school, because my perception of scholarships, from my perspective, wasn't very, it didn't seem right for me, because my perception was thinking scholarships are geared for the best of academic students, or, at the time I didn't feel too great about my own academic skills or personal skills. I don't think I applied for scholarships until I completed my first year of college, but once learning I was awarded scholarship, I was very extremely happy and delighted. It was able to relieve a lot of anxiety, some fears. It gave me some financial stability. It was great to know someone out there would believe in you and would support you even though they've never met you. My scholarship specifically was, the first one I had was through Children's Aid Foundation, and it was a $1,000 Trans-Canada one, and that was very meaningful. I'm just going to talk a bit about the application process. It can be very overwhelming for first-timers. You really want to put in the effort, because there's a lot riding on this. So it just created a lot of stress and anxiety. But once you complete the application, you feel pretty good about yourself. You feel a sense of accomplishment and ownership about it. Halfway through, once you're awarded, you get to write a midterm progress report, and that's a great time to reflect on your current semester and possibly look into the future a bit and set some goals for yourself. There's other scholarships that I'm just going to touch base on, that the application process is a little different in terms of the workers. The youth workers would nominate the youth for them, and this can be a little bit tricky sometimes, because then it comes down to which youth the worker selects and how much effort they put into the application. Essentially kind of decides your fate or destiny. Also, some students may not be great writers, and some may have a disability of some sort, so that can be a disadvantage for the applicants. It's really important to have the option or someone to help guide you, a worker to help support you through the first couple applications. I would think that's key. So I'm going to move on to my reasons for going to school. You know, I think there's a big nature versus nurture theory here. I was definitely heavily influenced by my surroundings. I would fall under that the category of social work and psychology, the 44% or so. And I'm not saying that all my experiences with the workers were positive or negative, but they definitely had an influence and drew me into this profession, especially having lived in the welfare system. You're exposed to situations, and you've shared a lot of experiences with other youth, so it makes you want to contribute back. I had a lull after high school. I spent a few years kind of in limbo working jobs in factories, securities, and retail. A few years of procrastination before actually enrolling. And what eventually led me into enrolling was essentially just taking a chance and seeing what would happen, and just reevaluating halfway through if it didn't go right. So then I'll see. But so far so good. I've been able to successfully graduate from Seneca, and now in my second year at university, still doing pretty well. Even though I didn't go to school until a few years after high school, I was heavily influenced by this career course project that I did in high school when I was 16. I believe it was a project where you kind of chose 3 potential career courses and really do some research into how much it'll cost and all that, and what it was a good research project. It kind of, although I didn't use it, but it definitely helped. So moving on to advice to others. I don't usually give advice because everyone's really unique, but if I had to share some of my tips, I would I'd say, you know, everything's difficult before it gets easy. You know, I think self-discipline and time management is really important. You know, I would almost try to advocate for youth to try to go out and listen to some self-discipline audio tapes, or even if there was workshops related to time management and self-discipline. Everyone has their own unique path. It's not a race to success. Don't have to have the answers or know everything right away. And believe in yourself. Developing social support and a network is really key. So, you know, use it's not even how large your network is, it's the support. If you have someone that you can go to for any help that you trust, that's really key. Self-care, the basics of sleep, nutrition, exercise, and, you know, some good coping strategies. And goal setting, making the right choices, asking yourself before you do anything, is this what you're about to do going to support your goal? And finally, this is what I'm learning more recently, is taking risks and going out and getting involved with clubs, sports, activities. Make the most of your community resources and post-secondary resources. There's lots and lots of programs and clubs out there that can help you further develop your skills, expand your social network, and develop personally. And yeah, currently I'm working at OACAS YouthCan as a coordinator. Oh, thanks for the slide switch. I'm currently working at OACAS YouthCan, and my role here is we plan annual conferences for youth in care. We are the largest youth in care network in Ontario for youth, and we also have a website. That website has a lot of cool resources. We publish a newsletter. We have an advocacy group that's kind of the go-to group that whenever we submit reports to the government. More recently, coming up in May, we're going to be going to Queen's Park to celebrate the Youth in Care, Children and Youth in Care Day. We're also calling it the Youth Civics Day. We also do networking zone events, and that's to promote leadership, skill building connections, and also, ironically, now I'm facilitating the awards program at OACAS, which is about 50 scholarships and bursaries a year going out to youth, youth applying for it to support their post-secondary goals. And that's all I got for today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your experiences as well. And what I love is that of course, it mirrors what I'm just about to talk about now, which is the advice to others. There's nothing like hearing your firsthand experience, of course. And again, in the same vein, this was my favorite part of the study personally. We could write a whole book with the amazing advice that we got from the youth who were offering it to future students. It was so hard to find my favorite quotes, so I've just put a few up here. There are many more in the report, so please go and take a look if you want to be inspired. I know that I actually read the quotes when I'm having a hard day at work, and they help me. The advice that the youth offered really covered everything from planning for the future to following your personal passions, self-discipline, and there's the financial literacy mention again. Both came up a lot as well. A lot of youth in care struggle with issues of self-esteem, feeling different and feeling apart from other people. There was a lot of advice and support in this area as well. Asking for help, as Brian was saying, is a big one. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help, because if you look for it, it will be there. And finally, in the words of one student, never forget your identity, that on paper, at least, you are a son or a daughter of the Crown of Canada, a title which makes you more Canadian than most of your peers. Into the next steps.
So where do scholarship recipients and our partners see opportunities moving forward? Before I begin this section, I just want to reinforce what Rebecca was saying. We do measured outcome survey work, online survey work with all sorts of different organizations. And I have to say, I don't think we've received such thoughtful and detailed responses from any group other than the young people that responded to this survey. So I should have at the top said thank you to them for the hours that were spent completing these surveys. These are some of the things that they have identified and our partners have identified as opportunities moving forward. Just to go through the list, first of all, alumni programs. Though many alum will choose to disassociate themselves with children's aid societies, creating a space for alumni can only benefit programs from both a mentoring perspective and a fundraising perspective. These young people will go on to have careers and will have disposable income to contribute to scholarship and other programs in the future. The second one, we didn't talk about it in detail here, but there are a number of new programs coming down the pipe or in existence right now. Fee waiver programs in Ontario. Most of you will be aware of the RESP programs, extended care programs to help with the transition. It's very important that youth, social workers, and particularly educators are familiar with these programs, because it really does make it possible for young people to carry on. Almost all of the youth surveyed identified a caring adult who made a difference at a critical moment in their lives. They all had, in many cases, very specific individuals who were responsible or helped them through a challenging moment. So all I can say is mentoring, mentoring, mentoring came back at us numerous times. The fourth point, and this is worth exploring further, we've mentioned it on several occasions. It appears as though things are going well with the scholarship programs, that young men are falling through the cracks. It's clearly a larger societal issue with young men not going on to post-secondary studies at the same rate as young women. But in this case, it's magnified, and we're not quite sure why that is. It's worth looking at further. it may be a case of program bias, application process selection. We're just not sure, but it's clear that there are fewer young men moving on to post-secondary studies. The full report for number 5, the full report includes a short case study on the Park Financial Literacy Program. All the scholarships in the world won't help an individual who can't manage their own finances. It's got to start early, not after a young person has run into cell phone debt or something like that. So financial literacy programs benefit whether young people are continuing on to post-secondary or not. And then regarding timing of decision to attend post-secondary studies, we need to work at planting the seed earlier in young people and having the opportunities available later on, even into the late 20s, for a young person to go on to post-secondary studies. And finally, measured outcome is in the business of program evaluation, but consistent ongoing longitudinal measurement is very important, both to ensuring program is having the desired outcome, and it also presents a solid case for support when you're going out to funders and things like that. So those are some of the next steps that were identified by our participants and partners. That's come to the end of our presentation. We wanted to take an opportunity, if there are any questions, we'd love to hear from you.
Again, if you do have questions, if you want to either raise your little yellow hand in your control panel, or and then I can unmute you and you can speak, or if you want to type a question in, I can also see that, and then I can unmute you as well, whatever works best for you. If anybody has any questions.
Brian, if I might, if I could take an initiative, because I was struck when you were speaking about the career course at high school having an influence on you, and I'm juxtaposing that between the results in the research that showed that very few young people seem to be influenced by educators and teachers. This is just speculation, but I'm wondering whether the teachers may have been somehow biased in the fact that they were working with young people in care and didn't believe they would be able to go on to post-secondary studies, whether that might be something that's an issue in the education system.
So sorry, Stephen. What was the question?
Sorry, I rambled there a little bit. I'm just curious about the low response rate from teachers, or the fact that very few youth identified the fact that they were influenced by a teacher to go on to post-secondary studies. And I was wondering whether you thought there might be a correlation between that and teachers not really thinking that a young person in care might have the ability to go on to post-secondary studies.
Yeah, that could very well be. I mean, I don't believe I personally identified myself as a youth in care in high school, but they may have known, I'm not sure. But yeah, there could be a correlation to that, the teachers not believing in the youth's future outlook. But I was pretty neutral with teachers as well. I neither had positive or negative experiences with them. But in terms of the research, the project, in terms of just researching what, it was more or less the process of doing it that I really enjoyed. Even though I didn't choose the subjects that I wasn't really, obviously at that time I had no idea what I wanted to do, so it wasn't meaningful, but the process of doing it was pretty helpful.
Great. Well, Rebecca, I don't see any questions coming up, which means we've solved all the problems of the world and answered everyone's question already. So
absolutely,
which is great to see. Certainly, if you do have any questions or comments about the research, you're welcome to contact us. There's Rebecca's phone number and contact information at the bottom of the page there. And it looks like we may get people away. If those of you who wish to go and see Patrick Chan skate, we'll we'll get you there in time to see him skate his long program. In the meantime, I would really encourage all of you to go online, measuredoutcome.org, and take a look at the full reports, the full report. This material is available free for all, and it's a good news story, which is something that we could all use today. So please use the information to adjust and improve your programs. You could use this material with the young people who you might be working with who are considering post-secondary studies, and of course, as mentioned, with donors. If you have any further questions or comments, please contact us. And I'd like to thank you all for taking the time this afternoon. Happy Valentine's Day, and I hope everybody has a wonderful long Family Day weekend.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Brian.